Hey, welcome to the Gastroenteritis Blues. My name is Steve Lippman, joined as always by my good friends, Emily Cannell, Dan Volpone. Dan, back from sunny Chicago. Dan, what was it that you were up to in Chicago, and how was it?
Oh, I was visiting my friend Jack from undergrad. He lives there. It was a very nice time. Besides, the weather was awful, but the weather was awful here too, so I didn't feel like I was missing out on too much. Uh, but yeah, it was a nice time. We actually, uh, you know, Jack had a lot planned, and we went to go see the Bean. And on our way to see the Bean, we found there's this sign for this bar called Taco Pub. And we were like, taco pub, this like two great things in one place. That sounds amazing. So like we had to go and we went and it was really good. And then we realized when we were there that they had two other locations in two different parts of the city. Uh, so we had already been to one and we were like, well, we have to go to the other two now. So in the 3 full days I was in the city of Chicago, I went to three different taco pubs in three different areas of the city.
And was there something that you would get specifically at these taco pubs?
Tacos and margaritas.
Wow. Can I ask you something? And Emily, we'll get you in a minute. Am I a freak for
Yes.
occasionally liking sugar on the rim of my margarita?
I think that's fine.
Emily?
No, that's the only way I drink. Well, not
Really?
not the only way I drink margaritas. That is a lie, but it is my preferred way to drink a margarita.
Okay, because I think
I mean,
we're
I
in the
get salt,
minority.
but I don't know. I like it's not a big deal to me either way. Like sometimes I'll get salt on there and I will like barely even use the salt. I'll just drink it.
It's a little salty for me.
Yeah.
Emily, when last we spoke, Will Smith had smacked Chris Rock on stage.
You broke the news.
We were having a hard time figuring out what was going on or if it was real or not. With a full week now, with that incident in the rear view, I imagine you've done some reading about it. So have I. I've talked to both gentlemen in the incident. Um, do you have anything to share about your feelings on this thing that happened, and any hot takes about what happened since we last talked?
Not particularly. I feel like it is seems to be more of a complex issue than just a smack. So I'm not interested in getting involved in it, honestly.
That's great.
So
That's great. Yeah, certainly a lot going on, and we wish everyone well. And if anybody would like to hash it out on here, Will is from Philadelphia. Chris is a friend. They can come on whenever they want. Great. We are moving on. The podcast is going. The Sixers played this week. They had 4 games. They lost to Milwaukee by only a few. In a game that really didn't bother me all that much. They played really well, but I really wanted them to win it. Then they played a real fucking stinker. They lost to Detroit. And then they beat Charlotte and Cleveland in a back-to-back. The Cleveland game was just today. We're recording this on Sunday. So where do we start? I guess we'll start with today's game. They beat Cleveland. The first quarter was not good. It was one of those quarters where I looked at the update on my phone after the first quarter from ESPN, and it was like end of the first quarter. The Sixers are, I think, down, and it was like it gave me the high score of the quarter for the Sixers, and it was George Niang with 5 points. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Why is this? Why is this happening? But Embiid was incredible. He had 44 and 17. Harden had 21 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists, but struggled from the field. They shot a bunch of free throws, and the Cavs coach, JB Bickerstaff, was crying about it. He said, we deserved to win that game. That game was taken from us. We deserved to win it.
who was it that was like, I'm sorry, like, was this like we won that game? Like pretended like the final score
That was
wasn't.
Donovan Mitchell.
That
This is what it reminds me of. That we actually won the game.
Mitchell. Yes, that would be from last year, Donovan Mitchell. when he thought there were some bad calls. He said, in my opinion, we
Yes.
won that game when the final score dictated that they lost that game. One of my favorite all-time quotes was when Donovan Mitchell said, in my opinion, we won that game. Just tremendous. Future Sixer, Donovan Mitchell, who the Jazz are really playing poorly. So Sixers won this game. They won both halves of this back-to-back. So let's talk about the wins maybe and then the losses, or however you want to do it. Emily, your thoughts on this win over Cleveland, who's a good team, who should not be on the Sixers level, but they could match up. We'll talk about the standings a bit later. Any thoughts from this game or maybe the Charlotte game, which was yesterday? Anything you have here?
Mostly just that Joel was incredible tonight. I know that it's Cleveland, but they're a good team. He just has been incredible all season. Like another 40-point game. He has 11 of them this season. Like, or if he has 40 points and 10 rebounds, he has 11 of those, which is crazy. Like, I don't know, that's like one every 7 or 8 games, basically. Like, that's crazy. I saw a stat that like only 2 other players have done that in the modern era. Both of them have won MVP. So maybe we should just give him the fucking award. And I honestly just think that, I mean, Joel put the team on his back at the end of this game, and it was like, we're not going to lose this stupid game. And he made them win it. And he is, at least to this any team, he is the most valuable player to the Sixers compared to like any other player to their team. So if that's how we're looking at the award, he also should win it. Yeah, great on Joel. I didn't watch the game yesterday. I was painting my house, so I listened to it on the radio.
Painting your house. What a sentence. That's very exciting. What color?
It's called Unusual Gray.
That's nice.
So that's what color the first floor is. Yeah, we're painting. The whole family was in town. It was great.
Wow. That's very fun. Dan, your thoughts on this game here against Cleveland? As Emily said, Joel really carried them in this one and gutted it out second night of a back-to-back.
Yeah, I mean that's the main thought, is he was phenomenal. Especially, the beginning of the fourth quarter was basically unstoppable for a good stretch there. As he should be. I think, one of the things we see from Joel, that we definitely saw tonight, is, this is a guy, and especially, now that he's in better shape than he's ever been. Like, Joel has been, I would argue, the most dominant defensive player in the playoffs over the past few seasons. Just like consistently really, really good on defense. Really anchors the team. Obviously now they have Harden, who can support them a little bit on offense if you want to have Joel step it up on defense. But you also have, like I said, Joel in better shape. And Joel was, yes, he had 44 and 17. This was his best effort on the boards in a while. He had 44 points. I think that's, speaks for itself. Was so dominant on offense. And defensively, I think he had 4 blocks and 3 steals and was more active than he's been and was dominating on that end too, more so than he has most of the year. And I think this is one of the games that reminds you of, how much better he can even be in the playoffs. Because again, in the regular season, he's not going to bring it like that on both ends every night. We don't want to get hurt, but he is in better shape. And this is the kind of game that shows you, he can do it all, and he will be doing it all in the playoffs. And so, yeah, I mean, they didn't shoot the ball well at all, and they still beat a pretty solid team. I mean, without Allen and without Mobley, I mean, they're like fine. I think even with them, they're, fine. But, this is a team who's, likely going to be a playoff team in the East. Although they'll be in the play-in, and that's a good win. So I thought it was an enjoyable game. It was fun. The Sixers went down, came back, and played hard and had a good, I thought a really good second half, and it was a lot of fun. And I the highlight of the game, like I said, is Joel, and Joel did it all, which was, it's always fun to see him do that.
And yesterday was a close game against Charlotte for the first half, and then the Sixers just beat the shit out of them for the second half, made every shot.
I missed it. I was at Taco Bell.
You were at multiple. Um, and, Harden was, he really decided to just distribute, really. He moved the ball a ton. He had 12 assists. Tobias was very good in that game. And it can transition a little bit into a separate topic, a little bit into like Harden being aggressive as a scorer versus him really focusing on finding his teammates. And I don't know that there's like a right answer for this, like what is the right method. And I think it kind of might have to be a night to night thing. Against Detroit, Harden was really bad, especially in the second half. I think he had 14 in the first half and 4 in the second half. And he just fell in love with the ISO thing in the second half, and the shots weren't going in. And he wasn't finding guys, and he was turning the ball over. And they played like shit against Detroit, and they slept on them. And Detroit was playing well, and they switched everything on those pick and rolls, and it was just really an ugly game that the Sixers got out hustled and outplayed, and it was really bad. And the ball stopped moving. And a lot of that, I think, was Harden, and it got really ugly. So on nights like that, it makes you feel like, okay, they need to move the ball more, and he needs to stop doing that thing. But on the other hand, I think like for years, we've had nobody who can get their own shot. We've had nobody who, when playoff defenses are trying, like can actually score the ball for themselves. So like part of me is like, part of trading for James Harden means that you hand him the ball, and when they're doubling in the post, you tell him to go ahead and do his thing and like go and get a shot. Now he has to actually be good at that. And like lately he has been struggling, and you need him to figure it out. But like you're asking him to do it. And like, so I don't need him to be like, whoever, point guard by committee guy. Like we need him to be the hub of the offense. But it's a balancing act that, against Detroit, it wasn't working, and he needs to figure it out, but it's still growing pains, and the season's coming to an end. So Emily, do you have a preference on that? And obviously it stuck out a lot against Detroit, and that might just be one of those games where the Sixers thought that they could just sleepwalk through that game against a really terrible team, and they just ended up losing. But him being aggressive as a scorer versus trying to have 12 assists a night, like, do you have a preference?
Well, I agree with you that it needs to be a night to night thing. Like obviously if the guys are hot or making shots, then yeah, distribute the ball. But if it's like the Detroit game where the bench had like 2 points in the first 3 quarters, then you need to score, and he needs to be smart enough to make that call, like to identify that priority and then like start scoring the ball. Like he does. I feel like you don't need to wait for Doc Rivers to tell you what to do, because God knows what he'll tell you. So he has been playing basketball long enough that I think he should be able to identify when he needs to become a distributor and when he needs to be able to initiate the offense and score.
Dan, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I basically agree that this is something that, like, part of what's made him a great player is that he's had this feel, and this is something that should come as he gets more familiar with the team, and it's why Daryl's stated belief that he doesn't think it's a big deal to go into the season with who you're going to take into the playoffs. He doesn't think it's a big deal if that's your final roster or not, is I think just ridiculous. But that's fine. Better late than never that we have James Harden. But like, yeah, it matters. And it's the kind of thing that, you see that, sometimes they're not on the same page, and he doesn't, quite feel comfortable with, when to do what, because he hasn't played that much with these guys. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, I trust him to figure it out. The biggest issue with me is his shot's not going down, and he's not shooting a good percentage at the rim. But the bigger issue before, which I think it has been addressed, I think Joel and Doc both talked about it, and it looked better tonight, is the, walk the ball up the court, cross half court with, 17 or 16 seconds, off a made basket, and then, dribble between your legs, ISO for like 10 seconds, and then go force up a shot and, grift for a foul that you're not going to get. That's what it looks like when they're not playing well. And you saw that, they really made an effort, at the start of the second half when things started to turn around tonight. Like you saw Joel catching rebounds and not even looking to pass, just like I'm going to get it across half court as fast as possible. You see they get it to Maxey, and Maxey's always fast over. But even Harden tonight, I thought, and even there were some plays like I noticed, like, it was off, a contested rebound, and so then they had to like kick it over to Harden, and it took a second. But even when on the plays Harden didn't get over till there was 17 seconds, 16 seconds on the shot clock, because there was some pressure in the backcourt. It was still like an immediate, like Joel sets the screen and like Harden's getting downhill. There was no like there was still some on certain possessions, but there was a lot less like okay, Joel set a screen, I didn't like that, he's going to go set 2 more screens and I won't see anything I like, and then I'm going to go force something. It's like I'm going to use this screen, and then I'm either going to look back to Joel or I'm going to kick it, or if no one picks me up, he made a couple floaters tonight. Still not shooting a good percentage really anywhere. I know that his free throws have kind of made up for that in true shooting, but on the games he doesn't get calls, that has been frustrating. But no, I think the big I trust him to figure that out, to figure out when to do what. And the big thing for me was too much time spent doing nothing. Because honestly, complaint I had was like, back when Ben was our main ball handler, it was like we have so much time where the guy who has the ball in his hands in a place where he can't score with the ball. Like, Ben's playing on the perimeter and can't make a shot from there. And it's there has been too much of like Harden just kind of dribbling around, not looking to score. Like you should be using the shot clock. If you should be looking to score like at every point you're in the shot clock. Like then if a play doesn't work, you can try something else. If you're hurting yourself, you're getting yourself worse shots by taking all that time. And so I was happy to see that was addressed pretty quickly, and it's looking better. At its worst, it can still look bad, but it's looking better.
So I don't know what happened this week, but to take you back to February, Tim Bontemps at ESPN. Oh, well, I guess we can, outside of the Detroit game, there was the Bucks game. This was a good close game. Harden was really good in this game. I was really happy with Harden's performance in this. He was scoring really efficiently from basically everywhere. He was killing Chris Middleton when Middleton was covering him. They just got very little contributions from basically anywhere else. Harden and Embiid did. And then down the stretch, they just couldn't make enough plays. Giannis was very good. I don't know if you guys have anything else. This was, basically a week ago for the listener. Do you guys have anything on the Bucks game at this point? It was a while ago now for them.
I mean, Joel, complained his minutes weren't matched to Giannis, so that might be something to see if they match up in the playoffs. But
fucking Paul Millsap was on the court and got demolished by Giannis, and that was basically the game.
I mean, that's the kind of game where you can't play the old guys, especially. I mean, they've been bad no matter what, but you really can't play them then. Doc's gonna play him anyway. I don't know. Yeah. It was a close game. The Sixers were down big, then they went up big, then they blew that. Like, not big, double digits, not big. But I don't know. I think that's the kind of game, this kind of year, that this time of year, that I just don't really care about. Like, I'm whatever. Like, it was a bummer. I was pissed they lost just because I get into the games at the time. But like, when the playoffs come, it'll be another close game. The starters will be on more. I thought the Sixers starters were much better. So, it's it is what it is, and I think it'd be a really fun 7-game series. But that's really all I got.
It did lose them the tiebreaker for standing.
Which might be a good thing, honestly.
Who knows?
We'll see.
Yeah. Emily, anything on that Bucks game?
At the time, the Bucks game was endlessly frustrating to me. It paired with this new thing we're about to talk about, where Joel is no longer the MVP front runner. Back to back, like really, really broke me in the beginning of the week. There's a 90-second voice memo that I had to pull into a gas station to record and send to Jordy because I had so many thoughts and I was so angry on my way to work. And I just was screaming in my car to myself, and I was like, I need to just tell someone this, but he was asleep, so I had to do a voice memo.
I think we might need that.
I know. I think
Patreon.
they delete there. It's in the ether. I referred to the corpse of Paul Millsap multiple times in it though. But I've gotten over it at this point. I am still mad about the final call on the block or the goaltending. That is still very frustrating to me because the Sixers would have had a chance had the ref not made the wrong call. But
plus they messed the clock up after too.
And they had the clock. They did I don't understand. I mean, it's probably in the rules, but the rules are stupid. Why is the jump ball at center court? It doesn't.
It should have just been out of bounds.
It wasn't.
Even if it wasn't going to be out of bounds, right? The play then becomes dead at the block. Fine, that screws the Sixers, but at least then you should reset the time to the time of the original goaltend call, not when the ball went out of bounds, because you're not playing the ball from out of bounds. The Sixers should have had time to get a shot off, and they did not because they put the wrong time on the clock.
It was very frustrating. I was at the game, so it was very frustrating being there because there was a lot of tension in the air and excitement in the air, and everyone was standing up. And it's one of those things that's just entirely deflating when you're there in person.
Oh.
So, but yeah, now in hindsight, coming off 2 wins, it's fine. I have calmed down.
Speaking of deflating, in mid-February, Tim Bontemps did a straw poll where he basically polls 100 media members to participate in an informal poll that mimics the postseason awards voting. Then he basically asks them who should win the MVP award. And at that time, Embiid had 45 first place votes to Nikola Jokic's 43. And 789 total points to Jokic's 754. This week, things have changed. What was it? Monday, Jokic sprinted past Embiid. He overtook him for first place with 62 first place votes to Embiid's 29. And 860 total points to Embiid's 719. A blowout in that straw poll. It makes me so mad. And all 4 years that Bontemps has done that poll, the winner of the final straw poll has won the award. All of the betting sites have followed suit since Dan, you would know this better than I do, but that's basically the status of it now, is that Jokic is now the
Embiid was minus 220 going into that article being published, which means basically you would have to bet $220 on Embiid just to profit 100. And now Jokic is minus 280. Meaning there wouldn't be, multiple players that minus. Embiid's now plus. You could now bet 100 on Embiid to win $250 or something like that, as opposed to having to bet 280 just to win 100. Or whatever, 220 to win 100. And Jokic is basically a bigger favorite than Embiid even was going into that poll being published.
So there's no point in talking about who should win MVP, because we all know how we feel. We feel that Embiid should be the MVP pretty undisputably. The real interesting thing for me in this bullshit is what happened. Because if you look at it, all these guys have played the way that they play. Embiid has Like his numbers are fairly
Jokic has been
commensurate.
worse. I mean, Jokic is
Jokic,
coming off a stretch where he's been a minus like in more games than not for the past couple of weeks. Like,
right. I mean, Drew Hanlon, who we've always loved in Philadelphia, has been on a crusade for his guy Embiid, talking about some of the negative Jokic stuff. But if you just look at his counting stats, they're basically on par with what he's been doing. The only thing that I can think of is that within this period of time, the Sixers have acquired James Harden, and Jokic has continued to not have any sort of star level running mate. You know, like Michael Porter Jr. is still out, and Jamal Murray is still out, and they have kept pace with basically their win total, you know, where they were at. So now, I mean, the Sixers are still where they're at in the East and all of that. And Harden has been up and down, but he is a great player, and they basically, you know, if that's the only thing, then they basically penalized Embiid for that. I think that it really matters that you're a great, legitimately great defender as a center all the time, which he is, which Jokic is not.
but part of the issue is that the people who think that Nikola Jokic, and this is not a person I'm making up, the people who think Nikola Jokic is one of the greatest basketball players of all time, like no one has ever had a season this good. This is a better than prime Michael Jordan season. These are things people think. Okay, I'm not making up a person here. That this is basically because whatever the people who don't, I'm just gonna be rude, whatever. The people don't understand, and I'm not saying I do, but I at least understand where to put them in context. The advanced metrics that are available become synonymous with analytics to people who don't really know what they're talking about. Now, I don't know anything about NBA analytics because the only people who really do are either working for third-party sites or front offices that sell this information for a lot of money, right? There's a reason that this information is very profitable and goes for a lot of money and is not available to the public. Teams wouldn't pay for that if PER was really good or if like Raptor was really good. And so any stat that's even worth anything becomes private anyway. And we're left with all these awful stats and all of these people who are I'm not saying there's not anyone who's good at explaining or working with these, but for the most part, the people who are already hired by teams or these third-party companies. So we're left with basically the leftover stats and the leftover stat nerds who the stats and the stat nerds were not of interest to the teams or the third-party companies. And that's what leads the discourse of these advanced metrics. And they're stupid and they're just not good enough. Like if teams really used them and they were useful, they wouldn't be free. And if they were as useful as the people who, push them say they are, then these people, that interpret them for all of us would be working somewhere where they get paid money, like with a statistics degree to talk about these instead of if you know who Andy Bailey is on Twitter, we'll just average a bunch of nonsense and call that analytics. And it's not, it just isn't. And I'm not saying I understand what it is, but it's not that. That's not what teams use. That's not what the smartest of smart people in basketball consider valuable at all. And if you look at these, the reason I bring this up, at this point you said is those numbers have Nikola Jokic as the second best defender in the NBA this season. Now,
can we just watch?
And I'm not saying he's the worst defender in the league. He I think was pretty close at one point. And he's nowhere near that now. But it's just kind of silly. And even if you've watched Embiid at some of the end of games this year, and just look how he can flip that. There's value at the end of games, to be able to flip that switch and that kind of points towards who he is as a player more than anything, that, he can really turn this on. He can really, become this defender in the moments that are most important. I'm not saying Jokic has made big defensive plays down the stretch. He's had some big blocks at the end of games. He's fine, but he's not nearly on Embiid's level. And he's definitely not the second best defender in the NBA. and really, like, even people who champion some of these metrics that I think are generally dumb, will tell you that on the defensive end of the floor, they're mostly not useful at all, because there's been articles written about it. Like, it's basically a problem that these don't measure defense well at all. And so, it just goes to show that someone claiming that Nikola Jokic is this good of a defender and using these stats to do it really don't know what these metrics mean at all. And you can look up what a lot of them are, and they're not really sensical. Like, they're just averaging together, like, points, rebounds, and assists in some way with, there's some square roots thrown in there. And I mean, I don't know why it came up, how someone came up with that, but it just because that's what, some equation is, doesn't make it particularly helpful.
So, do you think the Harden thing is basically how we got here?
No, I know I don't, honestly. I think, it would have helped if the Sixers could have grabbed the 1 seed with Harden. But you could spin that narrative either way, right? You could say, oh, Harden came in and he's taking away, some of the shots, but he's a former MVP, and they were playing so well before that they're basically on the same pace, which is, near the top of the East. That's how Joel had him playing. You could make that, someone make that case for Jokic if Murray came back. You could spin the stuff either way. Basically, the narrative went Jokic's way. You could argue a lot of reasons what that's about, but it's more about narrative than anything. It's the Jokic weirdos winning by the end of the year. It's the media loves Jokic. They just do. The Markieff Morris thing didn't stick to him at all.
Unbelievable.
Stuck to another player, and that's not necessarily relevant to the MVP thing. It's just like the media really does love Nikola Jokic, and they're whatever about Joel Embiid. And I think that midway through the season straw poll was, they were probably people who voted Embiid and didn't want to were probably pretty comfortable doing so, knowing that it's midway through the year, and I'm just going to change it anyway if they're still close, because really not much has changed. And if he asks the same people, then yeah, I mean, I think that it was always basically going to go to Jokic, and that's just seems to be how it is in the league. And that, I'm trying just not to think too much about it. It's very upsetting because Joel Embiid is a big part of my sports fandom, like my whole life, like my favorite athlete. And I kind of think that this is crap. I think we've seen the goalpost shifting over and over and over again, and as soon as the argument for Jokic in the first half of the season was how great his plus minus was, his on off splits, and then they've been bad and it doesn't matter. And no one sees his losses, so his highlights get posted, the losses get overlooked because no one watches their games. I don't know, the media loves the guy, and yeah, I think it sucks. I'm not saying Jokic isn't like deserving or anything, but like, he just won last year. In a normal year, that's kind of a knock on a guy when you won the year before. If it's close, usually they'll kind of go to the other guy. And that just didn't seem like it was going to happen because, part of it, maybe the Nuggets aren't contenders this year. Part of it is maybe a lot of the Jokic fans aren't even Nuggets fans. And so for a lot of Jokic supporters, this is basically their championship this year. And they're like, they have nothing else to play for. Their guys aren't playing. And they're like, we're going to go campaign like a bunch of sickos for Jokic to win MVP again and pretend he's not appreciated after he won last year. I don't know. I think it's a bunch of crap. The Nuggets are like very far under 500 against teams that are over 500. And on a normal year, that would matter. Apparently that doesn't matter this year. Nothing seems to matter. Like I said, it's just goalpost shifting. And it's, you see the actual, like, I don't know exactly who votes, but the media in general, like companies companies where, their top NBA, reporters to have votes. These media outlets will be, that you see the goalpost shifting from them too. It's just kind of like whatever best suits Jokic's narrative has seemed to become most important all of a sudden. I think it's a huge bummer, but whatever. Hopefully we have a good playoff run, and that'd be more important.
Emily, why do you think it happened? And is it basically over? There's 4 games left. What do you think?
I don't want to say in my head, I know it's basically over, but I don't want to say it in my heart. I just want it to not be. I think there is a possibility if the Nuggets end up in the play-in game. I think that would be the T-Wolves are in the play-in game right now and they're 2 games back. Like the Nuggets could lose, the T-Wolves could win. It's a possibility. And I think that's not a good look if your MVP comes from a team that is in the fucking play-in game. So I think that is like, it sounds terrible coming out of my mouth being like, that is Joel's best chance, because Joel has been putting his best chance on the court like night in and night out. He's like the fucking leading scorer in the NBA right now. Like the fact that this person is not leading for MVP is hilarious. Like what? Like, and I think that if Jokic wins this MVP, people will look back on this and it'll be like when Westbrook got his stupid triple-double MVP, even though he wasn't the best player in the league, just because people were like, wow, like triple doubles, you averaged one. That's a really cool thing. And then they'll be like, why the fuck did we vote for this guy for MVP? Like that he was not the best player in the league. And I think that this will, like looking back, that people will say the same thing about this, because the season that Joel is having is unlike anything that people have seen yet. We're just like ignoring it. And I think it's bullshit, basically.
Yeah, at this point we can really root for the T-Wolves. I do think it would be pretty ugly if they're in the play-in game and the MVP is there. And
the good thing is that we do, because Dan was saying that like whoever votes, he doesn't know who votes, but this shit gets released. And I can see who everyone who voted for 1, 2, and 3. So none of them are invited on the podcast ever, just so they know.
It's true. Joel is really going for it. Joel's doing a lot of press right now. So it's very clear that it means something to Joel to win this award, which I find very endearing. Joel did a profile with Sam Amick. He did one with Chris Mannix. He did James Corden show when he was out in LA. He did JJ Redick's podcast. So, Joel is doing press right now as he tries to pursue the award. So it makes me very sad that despite, in my opinion, him having what I think is the best season and him being what I define as literally the most valuable player to their team, it does seem like he's not going to get it. We're going to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to update you on the standings here in the Eastern Conference, talk to Drew about that, and see where we want the Sixers to land. Talk about, ever so briefly, Ben Simmons filing his grievance finally. Congrats to Dawn Staley, and predict the final week of regular season action. We'll be right back. We're back, welcoming in the one and only Drew Peltzman. Ladies and gentlemen, put in some applause right here. There's Drew. There
You're just making me do more work.
Some extra work. There he is. And here's a cat
you have
sound.
To put in your own applause, so.
And here is a dog, and there is a tiger. All right, now here's Drew.
Okay, so the top 4 teams in the standings that everyone knows about played today. So Miami beat the Raptors, and what that means is Miami's pretty much going to be confirmed the 1 seed. They have a pretty easy schedule, so unless they blow that, they'll be the 1 seed.
Okay.
Celtics played today. They won by a lot, by like 42 against the Wizards. Jesus. They're probably going to be the 2 seed. I think they play the Bucks one more time. They're only a half game up over the Bucks and the us and the Sixers. So the Bucks hold the tiebreaker over us, which we talked about, and then the 5 and 6 is the Bulls and Toronto. So depending on where we land and where Toronto and Chicago land, that's going to be the matchup. So if we're 4 and right now Chicago is 5, we would play them. But if we flip-flop with Milwaukee, then we would play Toronto. So we kind of want to stay the 4 seed as long as the Bulls stay the 5 seed, if that makes sense.
Interesting. So it's seeming like 3 or 4, basically.
Yeah, I doubt we're going to end up being 2 unless the Celtics like lose most of their games.
Right. So then, and then it's the play-in right now is the Nets and the Cavs.
Nets, Cavs, the Hawks, and the Hornets. The Raptors have a 2.5 game lead over the Cavs, so that play-in is almost set with like 4 games left. So we really don't got to worry about the play-in, but if
We're not in the play-in.
yeah, we don't got to worry about the play-in, but if
We clinched tonight.
but
We're not in
whoever ends up being the 8 seed, if we're the 4 seed, we might have to play them in the second round. So if the Nets end up the 8 seed after the play-in, play the Miami Heat, we're gonna have to play the winner of that series in the second round if we are the 4 seed, which is what we are right now.
So one question I have for the panel here is, are we afraid of Toronto at all? With one question or one caveat here being there was whispers this week somewhat about 1 or 2 Sixers being unvaccinated and thus not being able to play in Toronto. It's my understanding that these Sixers are not particularly important, that these Sixers are not guys that play all that often. Keith had an article recently, Keith Pompey, he did write that Matisse is vaccinated and would be able to play. I think anybody that it would be, Doc was fucking weird about it. Doc was like, at the beginning of the year, he was like, everybody's vaccinated. Like it's like 1 or 2 guys. Don't worry about it. We're doing great. And now all of a sudden he's being like, I don't want to talk about it.
Maybe
So,
Paul Millsap and DeAndre Jordan aren't vaccinated.
I absolutely think that would be great. I think they should do their own research. So I don't know. Obviously I think it's weird, a little weird to speculate on anything because we don't even really have any clues on anything like that. Like I don't think any of them are posting weird shit on Instagram or anything, so we don't have any idea. We'll find out probably on Thursday when they go to, or actually maybe we won't because they might dilute it with like ankle sprain and also Joel's not playing and also Harden's not playing. Who knows? But also Toronto as a team is a tough team, and they generally give Joel some trouble just with how smart Nick Nurse is. Like, so, all of those things combined, Emily, would you rather avoid playing Toronto, or are they just not really a team that you're worried about?
I mean, out of Toronto and Chicago, I'm more worried about Toronto, but I'm not like overly worried about them, but I would rather play the Bulls.
And is there a seed that you want or that you particularly don't want?
I mean, I'm good with if it all depends on like who we play, right? Like I like where we are now. If it means we play the 4 or 5 and we play the Bulls and then we play the winner of whatever, Miami and whoever. It's also weird because you never know, like it's 1 game. So like the play-in games, like right now it's Charlotte and Brooklyn, but like they could lose. Brooklyn could lose. Like they lost to the Hawks tonight, even though Kevin Durant had 55 points. So like they could.
Yeah.
It's 1 game.
Yeah. And they're looking less scary a little bit. I mean, Kyrie's in a big slump. He's, as he's had to play every single game, he's looked a little less good.
Tired.
So who knows? Dan, any thoughts on the Toronto stuff and any seed in particular that you want?
It's hard to say what seed I want just because everything is so weird right now. I can tell you that, I mean, I guess, like Emily said, I'm not afraid of Toronto. I think we'd probably win that series and it'd probably be a pain in the ass. I'd obviously rather play Chicago. I think Chicago and Cleveland are both going to be lucky to win a game in the playoffs. I think they stink. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The two teams I least want to play would be the Celtics and the Nets. It's a bummer because I think they're both really good and they're probably the two teams I want to see lose the most. So I would think I would like to only have to play one of them, which would mean not playing either till the conference finals. So one way that'd be possible is if Miami's the 1, the Sixers are the 4, the Nets grab the 7, which right now they're a game back of even having a chance to grab the 7 because they're not even going to be in the 7-8 game. And Boston stays the 2, so that the 7-2 Celtics and Nets play each other in the first round, and the Sixers couldn't face either until the conference finals. I think that would be ideal. The least ideal would probably be Celtics stay the 2, Sixers jump up to the 3, and then the net doesn't just any way you have to play both of those. I think is worst case scenario. Not to say anything bad about the Bucks who just beat us and are the defending champions. They just honestly scare me a little less. Just because the Nets can get so hot and they have something to prove against us. And the Celtics killed us last time we played us, and they've been killing everyone. They're probably looking like they might be the team to beat in the East right now. So yeah, putting those two off would be good. But the Brooklyn thing is so interesting because like you said, I mean, teams just lose games in general. Right now it'd be Charlotte, Brooklyn for the 9-10. And Brooklyn have to win 2 straight games, which is not a gimme even against that level of team. Brooklyn's been that level of team this year. And then if Atlanta were if something weird happened and like Charlotte jumped Atlanta and Brooklyn stayed in the 9-10 game, and then you have like an Atlanta Brooklyn game, which is just a rematch of last night, and Trae Young can get really hot. He's the kind of guy who can get really hot. So yeah, I mean, Brooklyn's probably going to make the playoffs, but it's especially if they stay in the 9-10, it's really not a guarantee, and that would be interesting and make the East look a lot less daunting. Especially if you have the Celtics and Bucks going against each other in that 3-4, like then one of them is knocking out the other one too, and you'll play whoever emerges from that in the conference finals if you can get past the Heat. I'd rather play the Heat than either of those and the Nets, right? So like Chicago I'd rather play Chicago or Cleveland or something like that in the first round. And of all the reasonable teams in the second round, I'd pick Miami.
Right.
And then at that point you deal with who's left. So I don't really mind the 4, but it's too early to say what seed I want because I don't know where everyone else is gonna end up.
Yeah. We'll see how it shakes out there. This will probably be a quick one. Ben Simmons has officially, shout out to Kyle Neubeck, who was really early on this, but had this really early. Ben Simmons has officially filed his grievance against the Sixers. He wants to recoup his $20 million that he lost. They fined him for not playing for the team. I really have no more energy to care about this stuff. Good luck. If I had to pick one, I would pick that he doesn't get his $20 million back just because, I'm also not a Josh Harris guy, but also I guess I would like that money to go to charity somewhere, not back into Harris's pocket, but not to Simmons. That's
You were hoping he would donate it to Tom Cotton's campaign.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. So I don't have much. I'm all out on Ben Simmons' Philadelphia financial intricacies. That's it. I got nothing. Dan, anything?
This is not something I have to care about.
God bless. Emily,
No,
you wanted to go ahead.
No, I just think he's gonna lose. So
yeah, I can't. The league does not want Ben to like walk out of Philadelphia with a duffel bag of $20 million after never playing for them. There's no way. Dawn Staley should have been the Sixers coach. I don't know, they didn't interview her. I do think she withdrew her name from consideration. I don't know if that was preemptive because they weren't necessarily going to interview her, but she's really cool. Tyler Tynes interviewed her a few months ago, and that was a great interview. But South Carolina just won. Congrats to her.
She doesn't need the Sixers job. She's too busy winning national championships. So
No, I mean it's only
It's a job for life. Why would you go to
this?
this? Why would you go take a Sixers job where you'll get fired after 3 years like every other coach does?
she's
Literally
great.
just to benefit us.
Yeah.
The Sixers would be so much better off.
Yes.
But no, she's doing just fine. Yeah, she's the best. So good on her. So Emily, this is it. Give us a standings update as we head into the final week of the regular season.
So we all got like a little wild this week, and it didn't pay off for really anyone. Because we sucked at picking games. So me and Steve both went 1-3. Because we both said they would beat Milwaukee and Detroit. I said they'd beat Cleveland. You said they'd beat Charlotte. So we got those right. Dan said they'd go 4-0. So he went 2-2. So he picked a game up on us. But the way
coming back.
I mean, the way the current standings are, I am in the lead at 49-30, then Steve at 48-31, and then Dan at 44-35. So you could catch Steve theoretically.
I could tie
so
Steve.
give me the games. Give me the games back.
So you're 1 game back from me, and Dan is 4 games back from you. So yeah, you could tie. So you guys should just pick completely opposite and see if one of you can go
Steve
4-0.
picks first, and I'm gonna pick the opposite.
Wait, but can Dan catch you?
No.
Okay. So I think that Emily has to go first, and then
Okay.
me, and then Dan.
Okay, so tell us the games.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. All right. The games are at Indiana, at Toronto, and then a back-to-back Indiana, and then Detroit at home. At Indiana, at Toronto, and then a back-to-back to end the season, Indiana and Detroit at home.
Okay.
What are you gonna do here?
I'm gonna say they lose at Indiana. The Pacers are not good, but you know it is what it is. I just don't think they're gonna go 4-0. So, and then they're gonna beat Toronto, and then so they're gonna go 1-3. They're gonna lose their next game, and then 3 wins to finish the season.
3-1.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I don't like it. I don't know.
Interesting. Now Dan, I think is just on autopilot here because he's just going to say the opposite of what I'm going to say.
That's
Mhm.
right. I'm feeling good about
Okay.
that.
All right.
But remember,
Then-
Steve, if you pick 1 game different from Emily, you could tie. If you pick 2 different, you could win.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And if you guys tie, then really neither of
You
you
don't win automatically. That's
I
not
don't
how
win.
this
But
works.
I won last year, and neither of you will have won either year. So I'll still have the most wins.
Okay, so I'm obviously not going for a tie here. I'm going for a lose. That's really what I'm going for. All right. So the Sixers are going to win against Indiana
Okay.
or at Indiana. That's for sure. They're going to lose at Toronto. They are going to win at Indiana in home against Indiana, and they're going to lose
Their last game of the season.
their
against
last
the
game of the season
Pistons.
with seeding all tied up. Everybody will rest. Center rotation will just be DeAndre and Paul with nothing to play for. So that's 2 differences, right?
That's 3 differences.
All right, great.
So you can take a commanding lead. We'll see. So Dan,
Alright, so I'm gonna say they win in Indiana.
yeah,
They win in Toronto. They lose at home against the Pacers because they're going to rest their guys on the front half of the back-to-back to start the season. And then they get their revenge and win against the Pistons on the last game of the season. They want to go into the playoffs on a high note.
Yeah. Wait, so you think they're going to lose the first at Indiana game? Because
No, I
Steve
think
thought they
they're-
were going to win it.
No, I thought Steve said they were going to lose that game.
No.
Oh no, so
No.
Steve had them going 2-2.
Yeah. Win-loss,
Okay,
win-loss.
no, so they're going to lose the first Indiana game.
Yeah, they are.
So I have them going 2-2 with the other one.
Yes.
But whatever Steve put, give me the other.
Opposite. Got it. I got it. We'll see how this shakes out.
All right. Well, this is it. Next weekend, we will be talking about a playoff series, unless the Sixers get the first or second seed, when we'll have to wait for the play-in. So we'll see. But failing that, we'll be getting ready for a playoff matchup. This is it. Last week of the regular season.
Woo.
Thank you, Drew. Follow Gastro Blues Pod, the YouTube, which we know about. Gastro Blues, Sixers podcast, Third and Girl, DA Pelts 13, Steve J. Lipman. Be safe and be great. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back, Dan. Welcome back, Steve. Good seeing everybody.